Well, what sounded like a bad idea turned into a book. Adam Rickley is our guest. The book is called Adam Rackley. I'm sorry. Salt, Sweat, and Tears, The Men Who Rode the Oceans. Adam Rackley, welcome to the Big 550 KTRS here in St. Louis. Adam,
Hi, McGraw. Thanks for having me with you.
You got it. All right, so take us back. You get this crazy idea, and you ask one of your friends, hey, do you want to row across the Atlantic?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was. I'd seen a documentary actually of a few people who'd rowed across the Atlantic, and it just struck me as the most incredible adventure. So I was looking for someone to join me in it, and I didn't know Jimmy that well actually before we did the row. But I'd heard we had mutual friends, and I'd heard some stories about his determination and his fitness that made me think he would be the right person to join me in the adventure.
So,
yeah, he never let me down.
Normally, a good friend in that situation says, "You're an idiot. Let me buy you a beer and let me talk you out of it." He says, "Let's do it."
Well, actually, I think his initial reaction when I told him about the idea was he agreed to meet me because he wanted to humor me for a bit, and then he decided that he'd try to let me down gently, at the end of the conversation. But something about the idea just stuck in his head, like it had stuck in mine. And pretty soon he couldn't think about anything else. So within a week or two of mentioning the idea to him, he was hooked, and we had a team.
So you and him sought then to row across the Atlantic Ocean, starting in Europe and ending in the Caribbean?
That's right, yeah. So we started in the Canary Islands off the coast of Spain. The route is about 3,500 miles, and it took us 11 weeks, 77 days to get from one side to the other.
Okay, and so this book, Salt, Sweat, and Tears, is the story of that trip, as well as the numerous people who've also tried this for years.
Yeah, that's right. So it's kind of two books in one, I guess. It's partly the whole thing is about the kind of human spirit of adventure, both from that kind of wide-ranging historical perspective and then also from the first-person perspective. The first ever kind of ocean row was 1896. Two Norwegian fishermen rowed from New York back across the North Atlantic to Europe. And the book kind of covers 114 years of history from that very first ocean row, looking at a lot of the interesting characters who subsequently tried to row across oceans. Many of them made it. Some of them didn't.
In 1896, they started this crazy idea of rowing, not sailing, but rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, right? Just so we have that correct, right? There was no motor, there was no sail. It was two people rowing.
That's right, and I think a lot of people when they first hear about it do confuse it with sailing across an ocean, and then there's a bit of a double take, and they realize that actually we're talking about rowing, not sailing.
Right. How many people have successfully completed the trip?
So as of today, there are over 300 people who successfully rowed across an ocean. It must be about 330, maybe 350 people have done an ocean row.
So, I'm sorry, 300 people have made it, and 350 people have failed?
No, about 350 people have made it.
Okay.
There have been, in terms of people lost at sea, in the early days, it was a pretty bad hit rate, really. The first kind of 80, 100 years of ocean rowing, about 20% of people who tried to row across the ocean died trying. In the last 20 years or so, the success rate has improved significantly. A lot of that is thanks to technology.
Sure.
So everybody who tries it has a GPS system. They've got a satellite phone. They've got something called an EPIRB, an emergency position indicating rescue beacon, which means that if you can set it off and get rescued if you get into difficulty. So there's all sorts of things that have made ocean rowing a lot safer in the last 20 years. But in the early days, it was a pretty dangerous thing to attempt.
And you have Angry Birds for when it gets boring on your iPhone.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, if there's time for Angry Birds, yeah.
Adam Rackley, our guest, his book is called Salt, Sweat, and Tears: The Men Who Rode the Oceans. Adam, two people for 11 weeks rowing in one direction. I would think physically it's exhausting, but mentally it's got to be worse.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, McGraw. I mean, I think for Jimmy and I, for me, it was definitely the mental side. I think for Jimmy, it was probably the more the physical side. I mean, when you talk about rowing across an ocean, people imagine it's like that scene from The Perfect Storm, where you've got, kind of 100-foot waves and 60-mile-an-hour winds. But actually, it couldn't be further from that. 95% of rowing an ocean is this mind-numbing boredom of the routine. You're rowing for 2 hours, you got 2 hours off, and then it's Groundhog Day all over again. 2 hours on, 2 hours off until you get to the other side. And that monotony and that kind of sensory deprivation really grinds you down. And, you miss your loved ones, you miss fresh food, you miss having showers, you miss fresh towels in a dry bed, you miss all of the things you take for granted when you're in dry land. So mentally, it's a real battle. For Jimmy, he had a lot of trouble with kind of chafing and a lot of physical difficulties that also made it challenging from that perspective.
The salt water, you're surrounded by water, but you're also you can't drink that salt water. Salt water is dangerous for you. So is there some way to turn the salt water into regular water, or do you have to carry the regular water with you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So you can convert the salt water into fresh water using a water maker, where it's an electric device that basically pushes the salt water through a kind of super fine filter that takes out all of the salt. So using this water maker, we each had probably about 4 liters of fresh water per day per person. And with that 4 liters, you got to drink it. You got to make your food with it. If you've got any left, you can think about maybe washing with it. But it's incredible to think, that we were surviving off 4 liters, kind of 8 pints of water. You would probably use, 50 times that normally on dry land to run your washing machine, flush the toilet, have a shower, have a bath, any of those.
Yeah. What about animals? Sharks surround you? Whales? They escort you across?
A lot of whales and a lot of dolphins, and it was absolutely amazing to row alongside them. There was one magical evening where we were rowing along, and this school of whales came up and swam alongside the boat, and for about half an hour they were just surfacing beside the boat, and kind of you got a sense of as inquisitive about us as we were about them. One thing we didn't see any of was sharks, which I found surprising, because having read a lot of the early accounts of ocean rowing, it seemed that a day wouldn't pass without a rower coming across a shark. But so that was very surprising that we didn't see any. And it makes me wonder how many fewer sharks there are in the sea these days than there were maybe 50 years ago.
It's also, you talk about changing the water to clear water you can drink. How did they do it 100 years ago before that technology?
So 100 years ago, they just had to carry all of the water with them. So the boats were a lot heavier, than they are today, and it's quite. I mean, to row across an ocean 100 years ago was a completely different undertaking, I think, to rowing across the ocean today for reasons like that. Because you didn't have electric water makers or freeze-dried food. So when Harbour and Samuelson rowed the ocean, it's amazing seeing their inventory. They had bottles of wine. They had a crate of fresh eggs with them. They had all sorts of crazy things that you would never take today, but that's all they had.
Would you do it again, Adam?
My wife asks that question all the time. Never say never, I'd say. But I think, as life moves on, there's probably less chance for those those types of adventures. But there are different adventures to be had.
Yeah, the book is called Salt, Sweat, and Tears, The Men Who Rode the Oceans. Adam Rackley. Adam, what's the movie situation like? Hollywood come calling?
I'm still waiting for the call. If you know anyone, then let me know.
All right, there you go. Adam Rackley, good luck with the book. And if somebody tells you to go jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, they don't mean it literally.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. Salt, Sweat, and Tears is the book. The Men Who Rode the Oceans. Adam Rackley, 920.